Okay. Whew. Okay. Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today, I'm just gonna be playing some levels, I guess. I'm gonna play Conclusive Journey. Sorry, I spelled it wrong. Conclusive Journey. Yeah, I think it had an update today. Let me check. Yeah, 18 plus hours ago. So play one. There was also a daily level a couple days ago. Let's play it. What the? Okay, we're not doing a bunch of commentary because I'm you know what, let's just play something else. Let's go on the random tab. Super level. Check. That. That's weird. Oh, come on. What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to, like, jump on that? What? This level is weird. Oh. I gotta have an incredibly good time. Bro. This level is on-site readable. For real. God, stupid internet. I think I'm just gonna show you guys. Just supposed to be color blockade. So guys, we're gonna play the tower a little. Let's play this level. I have some mods. The Tower by Rob. He did Happy New Year's. How did I get so many likes? Bro. How many likes? You're welcome, Rob. Okay, let's play. Yeah, I know there's checkpoints. You don't have to tell me. To get those normal coins. Since when was that white? Just so you guys know, I'm trying to get the last coin. I don't have the time coin because of that stupid cutscene at the end. Bro. Oh my god. running, boy? Yeah, of course. Of course I die. I'm literally... Oh, that was certainly fine. Oh my god. You know what, guys? I'm just gonna pause the recording and I'll resume it once I am at the last part. How do I pause it? What? Here, what? What? Huh. Come on. Okay, there we go. Now, pause. Okay, so guys, I am back. I might have enough time to get the last coin. I don't know. And yeah, this is gonna ruin my time. I would have made it going for this stupid animation. 9. Yep.
I see you.
I see you too, man. I see you too. Okay, now we can go through, finally. Yeah. Wait, what? What? Is this just me, or is this? Where? I should be like stuck here. Well, why is that there? It's like somebody tried to chain it off, but they didn't. What? What is going on? First there's this, then this stuff is missing, and now somebody tried to block it off. I forgot the hitboxes though. What is going on? He's not there, but... Oh, okay, well... Here, let me just... What? Why is there an edit? I didn't... What? Huh? Huh? Okay, that's enough. I think I'm just gonna do something else. I don't know what to do. You know what? I'm just gonna end the video. So, bye guys. What the heck is going on? Oh my god!
Tetris is a game to be remembered in history. Nearly 40 years after its release, new records are still being set, and the Tetris community is larger than ever. If you've watched me for a while, you may know that I already made Tetris with redstone a long time ago, but it absolutely sucked. It didn't have rotation, at least not while falling, and there was no color. So this is the story of how I upgraded this monstrosity and made redstone Tetris the right way. I hope you enjoy.
What?
The basic idea of Tetris is pretty simple. There are 7 pieces, or tetrominoes, and the game is played on a 10 by 20 board. At the start, a random piece starts falling. The player can move it left or right, or they can rotate it. Once it can't fall anymore, it gets locked into place, and a new random piece starts falling. This repeats itself over and over again. When pieces get locked in, if any horizontal lines become completely full, they get cleared, and the stuff above them shifts down. The more lines you clear, the more points you get. If your tower gets too high and a new piece can't spawn, you lose. And most versions of Tetris also have a level system where the pieces get faster and faster for every new level. So that's the basic idea, but when it comes to the specifics of the game, there's a lot of room for variation. Tetris has gone through remake after remake over the years, each one with slightly different rules and features. For example, some versions have a feature called soft drop, where you can speed up the piece falling, or hard drop, where you can instantly drop the piece. Some versions give different amounts of points for line clearing, or even have completely different rotation systems. So I decided to base all the features of my game on the NES version, which is the classic version of Tetris. That way I had a standard for how my game was going to work. As per usual, the first thing I built in Minecraft was the display. In my old game, the display was actually pretty small. Every tile was just 2 by 2 blocks, but the redstone behind it was much larger. Specifically, every tile took up a 4 by 6 area of space for the redstone before being condensed to 2 by 2 on the screen. Now, I've gotten a lot better at redstone over the years, so I was pretty confident that I could do the redstone in 4 by 4 this time instead of 4 by 6. And instead of doing this condensing thing, I felt like it would be better if the redstone and the screen both took up the same amount of space, 4 by 4 blocks per tile. So based on that, I knew that the redstone and the final screen would take up a space of 40 by 80 blocks. Then I started thinking about how I want the tiles to actually look. In my recent Pac-Man video, I put a redstone dot behind every tile and used a texture pack to add a new face to them. And since there are 16 signal strengths, I had 16 different textures to customize. So I wanted to use a similar approach for Tetris. I made one redstone dot for every tile again, and I started putting in some of the textures from the NES game. But I immediately ran into a problem. The max size for a texture face is 3 by 3 blocks. I don't know why, that's just how the Minecraft code works. So one redstone dot was not enough to fill up a 4 by 4 tile. I thought that maybe I could fill in the missing spaces with blocks, but I didn't like how that looked. So I decided to make each tile out of 4 copies of a 2 by 2 face. When you put in a signal strength value here, it gets duplicated to all 4 dots, and you get 4 copies of the texture. But of course, the downside to this is that now it's impossible to still look like the NES game. The top left section is different than the bottom right section, for example, which is impossible if your tile is made up of 4 copies. Technically, you could use 4 different textures for each of the 4 sections, but then you run out of signal strengths really fast. So I scrapped the NES textures and just made a flat color for each piece like this. It kinda sucks that the textures don't have any detail to them, but I still felt like this was the best option. Next, I wanted to start showing some pieces on a screen. At first, this seemed kind of complicated. Tetris pieces are not a single tile. They span multiple tiles and take up all kinds of different sizes. But then I realized something useful. Every piece is made up of exactly 4 tiles. So, with 4 matrix decoders, you can draw whatever piece you want. Each of these decoders takes an XY coordinate and tells that pixel to turn on. For example, if you put in 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, and 1, 4, that's the line piece. Or if you put in these coordinates, that's the square. But I also needed a way to tell the screen which color it is. Remember, the 7 colors are represented by signal strengths 1 through 7. So I made this circuit, which takes a 3-bit binary number and tells the screen to output that signal strength. For example, if I put in the number 4, then the piece comes out with signal strength 4, which according to the texture pack, is green. But of course, I didn't want to draw the pieces manually every time, so I made a ROM to store all 7 pieces. Now I could show any piece on the screen with just the flick of a lever. And as you can see, this worked perfectly. Next, I thought about how I'm going to rotate these pieces. Rotation is interesting, because like I said before, not every Tetris version does it the same way. But in the NES version, which again is my standard, this is how it works. There are 3 categories of pieces. Pieces that have 1 rotation state, 2 rotation states, and 4 rotation states. There's only one piece with 1 rotation state, the square. You can't rotate the square, so it always looks like this. Then there are 3 pieces that have 2 rotation states, the line piece, the Z piece, and the S piece. If you overlap the 2 states of the line piece, it looks like this. As it rotates, it just swaps between these states, regardless of whether it's a clockwise or counterclockwise rotation. The Z and S pieces are the same way. Their overlaps look like this. Again, they just swap between 2 states. And finally, these 3 pieces have 4 rotation states. The best way to describe how these pieces rotate is by centering them on a 3x3 grid and physically rotating that grid. Clockwise rotation turns the grid like this, and counterclockwise like this. This creates 4
Oh my.
tone dot for every tile again, and I started putting in some of the textures from the NES game. But I immediately ran into a problem. The max size for a texture face is 3x3 blocks. I don't know why, that's just how the Minecraft code.
This Black Forest gummy bear is now juicier than ever. Black Forest, real juicy, real good.
What is halfway between a 1x1 and a 3x3? Of course, it's just a 2x2. Now, what's halfway between a 1x1 and a 2x2? I suppose it would be something called a 1.5 by 1.5, but what would such thing even look like? Today, I want to answer that question and break out of the old boring world of integer numbers of layers on cubes, and instead make the world's first Rubik's Cube with a fractional number of layers. But if we really want to make a 1.5 by 1.5, the first step is to go back to that original question and brainstorm what the heck it would even look like. Here's what I'm thinking. If a 2x2 has 2 full layers on each axis, then a 1.5 by 1.5 would have 1.5 layers. So basically it would just be like a 2x2, except one of the layers on each axis would be chopped down to half the size. So now how do we make this puzzle a reality? Well, you might think that the easiest way is to do exactly what I just said, take a normal size 2x2 and then chop down the layers to make them half-sized, but that is not the best way to do this. For one thing, once you started chopping down into those pieces, you'd end up hitting these white inner pieces, you'd probably even hit that screw right there, and the puzzle would just fall apart. And even if you could find, say, a different 2x2 with enough clearance inside to let you make those cuts, now you'd be left with these big gaping holes in all the pieces that you'd have to fill in, sand down, make them look nice. It would just be a pain and a lot of work. Instead, my go-to method for 2x2 mods, instead of starting with a big cube and cutting down, is actually starting with a little cube and working up. I've used this method in the past to make everything from the lightest and the heaviest 2x2s to some fun shape mods to whatever the heck these things are. And you can see the benefit is that the mechanism inside is so small that you can make the pieces look like pretty much whatever you want. And the best part is, you don't have to physically build up the pieces into the shapes you want using traditional modding. You can instead just design the shapes on a computer, 3D print them out, and glue them on as extensions onto the mini cube. So I went ahead and designed the 4 types of pieces that I think we'll need to make the 1.5 by 1.5 work, and then I went and 3D printed them in the exact quantities that we need for each type of piece. And here's the result. As you can see, there's 8 different pieces in 4 different shapes, so let's go ahead and pop these off of here. So now we can visualize how these pieces will end up looking on the final cube. As you can see, there's 2 main sizes of pieces. There's the little half ones that are basically the same size as a single cubie on the mini one, and there's the big ones that are basically the same size as a normal 2x2 piece. But interestingly, most of the pieces are actually somewhere in between, so we have 3 pieces that are actually only sticking out in one axis like this, and then we have 3 more pieces that are sticking out in 2 different axes, and you can kind of start to imagine what this final cube will end up looking like. I will say, even though I've made a lot of 2x2 extensions before, this is my first time trying out the fit of these ones in particular, and I think they look great. They definitely fit just like I wanted them to. And the reason I decided to add these little thin extensions on even the smaller half pieces is just so that we have a consistent finish across the entire puzzle. You can imagine it would get a little bit messier if we had parts of the pieces 3D printed and parts of the pieces still using the original plastic, so I just decided to make everything consistent and all 3D printed. So now that we have our extensions in hand and we know they fit great,
Hello there, my name's Brandon and I make pictures out of tiny squares. And I hope everyone's been doing well. I took a bit of a break there through January, kind of focusing on other projects that needed attention. But I'm back now, and I just wanted to ease back into video work with something that's kind of silly. So what I wanted to try today was making a sprite by slowly introducing one color at a time to it. And actually having the goal to be like reaching this point where it starts to go a little too far on purpose. A lot of times when making a sprite, you may have a set palette that you're working with and kind of using those colors all at once together. So I think it'll be fun to approach it from this workflow of painting in a single color at a time before moving on to the next. And just kind of seeing how each one changes the look. And then on top of that, maybe we'll find some sort of tipping point as far as the moment where it does become too much. So as you can see, I'm making a Mario sprite for this exercise, and I'm just trying to make this goofy sort of running pose. I suppose taking a lot of inspiration from the Super Nintendo sprite there. And that one, by the way, I think uses 13 colors total. So my goal is definitely going to be to push mine further than that. So the line work version, I'm just going to refer to as being the first color. I know technically a solid background kind of counts as a color, but I like to think of this just being like a line work sprite with transparency. So in terms of adding an actual intentional second color, I want to pick something that's representative. And I think a solid red would be a wise choice here, just as far as communicating probably the dominant color that we think of for Mario. Next, I'll add in a kind of beigey tone to use for skin and highlights. And this actually brings us into a similar color usage as the NES sprite. And then for the fourth color, it feels like a good opportunity to finally introduce the blue overalls and then reassign the red into the shirt, and this will kind of establish, his typical appearance. From here, it's going to be kind of a grab bag of introducing new colors to give more depth into the costuming. So I've gone with a white to differentiate the gloves from the skin tone, and then added a brown into the shoes. For colors 7 and 8, I started to introduce shade tones that give the sprite some dimension. So the first one there is sort of this desaturated purple that works as a shade tone for both the red and the blue areas. And then the second shade tone is kind of a pinkish hue for the skin. Now that I've got some momentum on this single color workflow, what I did was to actually plan out the next 8 colors ahead of time. Starting with this bright yellow for the buttons, which I'm squeezing in right away now because I actually didn't think of doing it earlier during the first 8 colors. But most of these new colors are actually just lighter or darker versions of what's already on the sprite, and these will basically just expand the solid areas to be more of a gradient approach of shades and highlights. There's a subtle hue shift in these tones too. So for instance, the red gets more orange as it gets lighter, and the blue gets more turquoisey as it gets lighter. And both of those go toward purple on the darker end. Around this time is where we're in that range of the Super Nintendo sprite, and we can definitely notice that similarity in the level of rendering. And honestly, this is quite a pleasing range to be in. I don't know if that means that it's all downhill from here. I'm going to try to keep things as aesthetically pleasing as I can going forward, but we'll see. So that brings us to the next 8 colors, which for me was where I could feel the ideas for genuine improvements start to dwindle away. Certainly we could keep subdividing the red and blue gradients into even finer increments, but I was trying to instead find colors that would serve more of a purpose than that. So what you'll notice is that most of these new additions are actually on the darker side. And the reason for this is that they're going to be outline colors. So rather than just using black line work throughout the sprite, we can introduce a bunch of new colors that give a bit of tone to the outline depending on which area of the sprite it is. So the blue overalls, for instance, have kind of a deep blue tone for the outline now. Areas with the skin and the shirt have a deeper red tone, and so on. And then past that, I wanted to try some colors that weren't actually represented yet and had no good reason to be there. So I've given myself these couple of green tones, and I'm just trying to sneak those into the sprite, mostly to see what happens. And kind of by accident, I actually really ended up liking the way that olive green looks as a highlight in the brown areas of the hair. Like it's giving some kind of interesting lighting effect or something. Along those same lines, the final 2 colors are these like ambient highlights of pink and teal. I thought they could be this like final edition of maybe some crazy colored rim lighting just to do something different. Maybe it's kind of like a Rainbow Road vibrancy or something, I'm not sure. Either way, I think this probably feels like a good spot to call a somewhat official endpoint where a lot of the color decisions at least still have some intention to them. So let's go ahead and review the build up to this, and I'll come back and then we can explore a few other variations. Alright, so I did some slight touching up, but still sticking within that set of 24 colors. This is definitely a bit over-rendered compared to what I'd normally do, but I think it's actually in a pretty cool spot here. It does feel like we started to hit diminishing returns on that final stretch, though. Like on a quick glance, it does take a bit to even notice what's different along that bottom row, aside from probably the bright rim lighting on the final ones. So I think for me, my favorite look is probably somewhere in this middle third, like maybe anywhere from about 10 to 13 was a pretty nice spot. But that's not really like any kind of universal truth about sprite design. It's just a personal preference for this one in particular, I guess.
Wait, it's still recording? Oh my god. Oh, okay.